The summer camp nightmare. Hey there, everyone. I've got a chilling true story that still sends shivers down my spine every summer. It happened during my time at a seemingly idyllic summer camp, nestled deep in the woods of upstate New York. I was 13 at the time, eager to embrace the adventures that awaited me in the great outdoors. The camp was situated on the shores of a crystal-clear lake, surrounded by thick forests that seemed to stretch on forever. It was the perfect setting for a summer of fun, friendship, or so I thought. The first few weeks at camp were everything you'd expect: canoeing on the lake, hiking through the dense woods, and making s'mores around the campfire. But as July turned into August, strange things began to happen. It all started one night when we were telling ghost stories around the campfire. One of the counselors, Sarah, shared a tale about a ghostly figure, said to roam the woods, searching for something it had lost. She claimed it was a local legend, but her eyes betrayed a hint of unease. Following day, I joined a group of friends for a hike deep into the forest. The sun was high, and the woods seemed alive with the songs of birds and the rustling of leaves. But as we ventured farther from camp, an eerie silence descended, broken only by the occasional snap of a twig. We stopped to rest near a small clearing, and that's when we heard a faint, mournful wail echoing through the trees. At first, we dismissed it as the wind, but the sound grew closer and more distinct, like the anguished cry of someone in pain. We exchanged nervous glances and decided to follow the sound. It led us deeper into the woods, where we stumbled upon an old, weathered grave marker. The name on it had long faded, but the date was still visible, 1878. Suddenly, the wailing grew louder, and a chilling breeze enveloped us. I felt a presence, something watching from the shadows. Panic set in as we fled back to camp, leaving the eerie cries behind. That night, we couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Shadows danced outside our cabin windows, and strange, whispered voices filled the air. Sleep eluded us, and we spent the night huddled together, clutching flashlights like lifelines. The next day, we confronted Sarah, the counselor who had told us the ghost story. She confessed that she had made it up, but her fear was palpable. She said she had never heard the wailing before and had no explanation for the eerie events. As the days passed, the strange occurrences continued: footsteps outside our cabins at night, objects moving on their own, and the constant feeling of being followed. Campers started to leave one by one, their faces pale with fear. By the end of that summer, the camp had all but emptied. The once lively place now felt desolate and haunted. We left with our own stories to tell, stories that still haunt our dreams. The Thing in the Basement. Hey guys, today I'm going to share a creepy summertime horror story with you. It's a true story, and it happened to me when I was a kid. It was a hot summer day, and I was playing with my friends in the woods behind our houses. We were having a lot of fun, running around and exploring. But then we came across something strange. It was a small, abandoned cabin. It was old and dilapidated, and it looked like it had been empty for years. But we were curious, so we decided to go inside. The inside of the cabin was dark and dusty. The furniture was covered in sheets, and the air was thick with the smell of mildew. But we didn't care. We were too excited to be exploring this spooky place. We started to wander around the cabin, looking at all the old things. There was an old fireplace, a dusty piano, and even a rocking chair that was moving on its own. We were starting to get scared, but we were also having fun. We were like a bunch of kids in a horror movie. But then we heard a noise. It was coming from the basement. We froze. We were all scared, but we were also curious. We wanted to know what was down there. We slowly made our way to the basement door. It was creaky and old, and it made a loud noise when we opened it. We peered down into the darkness. We couldn't see anything. "Hello," one of my friends called out, but there was no answer. We took a deep breath and started down the stairs. The basement was even darker and dustier than the main floor. The only light came from a few cracks in the boarded-up windows. We could hear the sound of our own breathing as we made our way through the darkness. We started to see things in the shadows. We saw old dolls, rocking chairs, and even a figure standing in the corner. But it was just our imaginations. We got to the bottom of the stairs and looked around. The basement was empty. "Maybe we heard something wrong," one of my friends said. We were about to turn and leave when we heard the noise again. It was coming from behind a stack of boxes. We slowly made our way over to the boxes. We could hear the noise getting louder. We peeked behind the boxes, and our blood ran cold. There was a thing standing there. It was tall and thin, with long white hair. It had no eyes or nose, and its mouth was stretched into a wide, hideous grin. We screamed and ran back up the stairs. We slammed the door shut and locked it. We stood there for a long time, listening to the thing banging on the door. Finally, the noise stopped. We were too scared to go back down into the basement. We ran out of the cabin and back into the woods. We didn't run until we got to our houses. We never went back to that cabin again. I don't know what that thing was, but I know it was real, and I know that it was evil. So, if you're ever in the woods and you come across an abandoned cabin, don't go inside. You never know what might be waiting for you. The Summertime Stalker. I've always been a bit of a night owl. I love the way the world feels different at night, when everything is quiet and still. But one summer night, my love of the night almost got me killed. I was walking home from a friend's house, and I decided to take a shortcut through the woods. It was a beautiful night, with a full moon and a cool breeze. I had been walking for about 10 minutes when I heard a noise behind me. I stopped and turned around, but I didn't see anything. I thought I must have imagined it, so I started walking again. But then I heard the noise again. It was louder this time, and it sounded like someone was following me. I started to walk faster, but I could hear the footsteps behind me getting closer. I was starting to panic. I broke into a run, but the footsteps were still right behind me. I could hear them getting closer and closer. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I was so scared that I could barely breathe. I ran as fast as I could, but I couldn't seem to outrun the footsteps. They were getting closer and closer. I could see my house in the distance. I just had to make it a little bit further. I pushed myself to run faster. I could feel the tears streaming down my face. I was so close to my house. I could see the front door. I just had to reach it. I sprinted the last few yards and burst through the front door. I slammed the door shut and locked it. I collapsed on the floor, sobbing. I had never been so scared in my life. I don't know who or what was following me that night, but I know that it was evil, and I know that I'm lucky to be alive. So if you're ever walking home at night and you hear footsteps behind you, don't ignore them. Run. Run as fast as you can, and don't look back.